All righty. Well, I guess we will. Oh, hi there. I guess we will begin. So hello and welcome everybody to today's AMS Student Town Hall meeting. It's moving forward as a community, navigating troubling times as a student, and we are so glad that you could join us. We're fortunate to have an incredible panel with us today. We've got Dr. Dave Stensrud, Dr. Rich Clark, Becky DePodwin, and with our moderator, Dr. Dylan Blunt. Now, before we dive in, just a quick note on how today's show will run. If you have a question for our panel, please put it in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen there. You'll be able to enter your question that way. That's a spot where we'll be checking for questions from the audience, not the chat. If you put something in the Q&A that is not a question, or if it doesn't quite fit with today's topic, then it may get dismissed. Now, nothing personal, it's just we want to keep the questions focused so that the panel can address as many of those questions as possible. However, today I will make an exception. If you put on there that you are in a watch party and how many people are at that watch party, we'll keep that on there for the record. And we'll save some time at the end, at the end for audience questions, but please don't wait. Feel free to send those questions in at any point during the discussion. And if it fits in with the flow of the discussion at that time, we may address it right then and there. Now, I am thrilled to introduce our moderator for today, Dr. Dylan Blunt. Dylan is an assistant professor at Ohio University in the Department of Geography, where he teaches meteorology courses. He is also the current chair of the AMS Board on Student Affairs. Dylan recently earned his PhD in atmospheric science from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, where his research focused on mesoscale convective systems. Dylan, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Gideon, for the introduction and letting us know how everything will work. So I'd like to also welcome everyone and thank everyone for joining us tonight at the town hall. So the AMS Board on Student Affairs, or you'll hear me refer to it as BOSA, is happy to host this webinar on the important topic of your future as a student and then beyond. So before we begin, I'd like to give a very brief introduction of BOSA in case you're not familiar with us. We are a student-run board within the American Meteorological Society that aims to serve students within the society. We're here for you. That's the biggest thing I want you to take away from my little BOSA introduction. Some examples include providing a student voice to AMS Council, organizing student professional development events, organizing the student conference and events at other conferences, outreach and engagement. You've probably seen us on social media, and then providing an outlet for student voices to be heard and participate at AMS. So with this town hall, after changes to our field over the past several months, BOSA felt it was important to start conversations with AMS about how student needs can be highlighted and hopefully eased. So since then, BOSA and AMS staff has worked closely together to prepare this town hall because we felt it was important for you to bring your voice to the table and give you a chance to interact with AMS leadership. So with that, we have three great panelists lined up for our discussions tonight, who all serve in leadership roles within AMS. Our first panelist is Becky DePodwin, an AMS counselor and member of the AMS Executive Committee. She is a strategy and business transformation consultant for Guidehouse under the Defense and Security segment, currently supporting FEMA. She holds a Bachelor of Science in Meteorology from the University of Northern Colorado and a Master of Science in Emergency Management from Millersville University. Our next panelist is Dr. Richard Clark. He was the 2022 AMS President, Professor of Meteorology Emeritus. I keep mixing the next two words up at Millersville University, and the current chair of the Federation Assembly of the American Institute of Physics. He also serves as the VP of the Board of Trustees of the North Museum of Nature and Science and the Partnership for Public Health in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, Lancaster County. Our final panelist will be Dr. David Stensrud, current AMS president. He is a professor of meteorology in the Department of Meteorology and Atmospheric Science at the Pennsylvania State University. He started his career with the NOAA National Severe Storms Lab, where he explored the benefits of using model ensembles for severe weather forecasts and warnings. Dr. Stensrud received his BA in Mathematics and Meteorology from the University of Wisconsin-Madison and his MS and PhD in Meteorology from Penn State. So I would like to thank all of our panelists for being here today. And before we get started with discussions, I want to note that there are still many unknowns in our field today about where we're headed. So with this in mind, there may be no clear answer or a path for a particular question that you may ask. However, our panelists will provide you with their best answer and guidance. So there's a Q&A button, as Gideon mentioned, on your screen that you can drop questions in at any time. So please feel free to start asking away. And over the past couple weeks, we've had a form open for questions to be submitted ahead of time in case you were nervous about asking a question during this town hall, but please don't be shy. So I'll kick it off with one of those, and this is meant to be a more informal discussion with the panelists. So where our discussion may go may arise from a question or perhaps a couple questions that can be combined together. So I'll go ahead and kick it off with asking probably the biggest thing that most students that submitted questions beforehand had concerns with. What would the opportunities look like for undergrads in the coming couple of years, and then as they go into their career field from each of your perspectives? I'll let whoever start.
Becky, do you want to start? Since you were introduced first.
I was gonna say I'm the one that doesn't work the most with students, so
That's okay. We'll
no,
get
I
you out of
think
the way then.
yeah. No, I mean I think it's a great question, and I think it's one that at least I don't have a really strong feeling on right now. Obviously, there's been a lot of funding cuts, and that's going to impact research opportunities and grad school opportunities. But I don't think any of us have a real good sense for the caliber of impact just yet. So from that standpoint, I think it's still a bit of a wait and see. I honestly would love to hear more from Rich and Dave on this, and what the pulse is from the students that you work with. So Rich, I'm gonna
Dave, you deal with graduate students more than I do. I'll let you go before me.
Okay, so this might be a bit long-winded here. We're in September now, so it's the last month of the fiscal year in the government. The government runs October 1st to September 30th. And lots of things have to happen this month, including good behavior on both sides of the aisle, so to speak, to get appropriations bills passed. And I think what we've seen pretty much all year so far is a lot of instability in various things, a lot of disruption going on. But disruption isn't really good for business, and so at some point it needs to come to an end. And the question is, how long is it going to take before we get there? But I can say that some of that has already started to it's kind of wane a bit. So starting back in end of January, early February, pretty much like National Science Foundation grants that would fund faculty and graduate students, pretty much anything that was being explored for possible funding was put in abeyance until they could sort of figure out what to do. That logjam now has actually started to loosen a bit, and as NSF grants at least are starting to trickle in, which is a very positive thing. This is the first really that we've seen this, in what, 6-7 months. I don't know about the other funding agencies on the federal side, but I think it is a sense that this amount of instability can only last a certain period of time before it has increasing harm. And so, my sense at least is that by early next year, we should really have a much better idea what's going on, and you will start seeing more stability. And I think stability is good for hiring, because I think a lot of places are holding off on hiring right now because they really don't know what's going to happen. If they hire in the wrong places, that might not be good for business. And so they're just being very careful. And so my hope and expectation, and of course, it's worth the money you paid to come to the webinar here, is that things will get better and we'll have a clearer idea in another few months where things sit. And some of that could even happen faster. So I think patience right now is a very good thing. And with that, I will pass it to Rich for his wisdom.
Yeah, I just thanks. it's important to hear your perspective, Dave, because you deal with graduate students a lot more than I do. But what I have seen on the undergraduate level is there's a lot fewer opportunities for fall 25. The number of graduate positions, graduate student positions really, sort of took a hit, and at least it's the schools that I'm familiar with. However, what I would argue is that a lot of that funding, of course, comes from National Science Foundation and National Weather Service or NOAA and the more traditional venues for that, the agencies for that type of funding. But there's funding out there for scientists that want to continue. It might not be the large $1 million grants that we see coming out of National Science Foundation, but some of the state agencies, I know in Pennsylvania, and I'm sure you are aware of this too, Dave, that in Pennsylvania, the DEP provides funding. So if you're in a field like atmospheric chemistry, or you're doing some aerosol particle studies or something like that, those kinds of things are being funded at the state level. So I would say check, now this isn't for the undergraduate to do, but I'm just saying that, you're not going to probably get a graduate opportunity until such time as the faculty researcher at the university has funding to bring you in. And whenever the times get tough, people look outside their traditional boxes for funding opportunities, and there are a few out there. Now, I think a lot, like you say, is going to depend on what happens in the next fiscal year and where we stand there. But I always try to be optimistic about this. And let's suppose you don't get into graduate school your first time through because there isn't an opportunity available to you. There are other opportunities available that you should seek out. And you don't want to leave. You don't want to be idle during the year. If you have to sit out a year, let's say, and wait on graduate opportunities, I think this is happening in a few instances. Don't be idle. Find yourself a position where you're doing some data analysis. You're using your programming skills. You're doing some creative thinking. And I'll talk more about that later. I have a list that I'm going to post to you all later, but I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
If I may just jump in on that, there's no rule that says you have to go to grad school immediately following undergrad. There was a 6-year gap between my undergrad and starting my master's degree. And I had no concept of going to graduate school or getting a master's degree when I graduated. And to be fair, I wasn't trying to go the research trend. I was more in private sector. But 6 years into my career as an operational forecaster, I realized that I wanted to do more. And so to Rich's point, there is a lot you can do while things may still be kind of unstable and you're still waiting on funding or trying to figure out what direction to go. There's a lot of different opportunities and different jobs that can help build skill sets, and they may not be what you think. They may not be directly in the field of meteorology, but say there's something that can help you build your communication skills or your writing skills. I think there are always some opportunity out there to hone in and just become better at maybe one or two things while you're waiting for the bigger opportunity to come around.
And you broaden your portfolio this way, and not that I would ever recommend that someone would follow the path that I had taken. But I mean, I went to graduate school for astronomy for a while, and then I took a 7-year hiatus while I was working as a textile chemist, and went back to graduate school whenever I was 33 years old, and received my PhD whenever I was 38. I wouldn't expect anybody to follow that path, but I loved it because I gained a lot of industry experience during those 7 years as a textile chemist that has been valuable throughout my career. So you never know. I put in some of the comments below, think outside the box and think around corners.
Yeah, thank you all for that. To like go off of that, something that is like a trend in some of the questions. What skills are currently the hot thing within our field? What skills are like private companies seeking out the most right now? Uh, Government, academia, those types of things. I'll pass it to Dave, since you haven't talked for a minute.
Wow, okay. So if you think about the, recent graduates and what their positions are, meteorologist is obviously probably the dominant one that you see. But another common position is analyst, because you have a pretty unique skill set, right? I mean, the programs that we have, you're very solid in math, calculus, PDEs, OEDs. You have statistics. You have meteorology courses where, in essence, you analyze what's going on currently, and then you work to predict what's happening in the future. And part of that prediction also then involves sort of an assessment of uncertainty, right, or confidence per se, which most disciplines don't go to how you basically live with varying degrees of confidence, right? They usually are looking at things that are much more, A or B. And so that by itself is a pretty unique skill to have. Statistics, computer programming is probably something that you've had. And of course, communication and presenting yourself in an effective manner. And so those skill sets really cut across a lot of different disciplines. And so when I look at where past graduates from my department have gone, I'm really surprised at where they're at. I would have never expected somebody to be in this particular field, but they find these opportunities, which I think is a lot easier today than it used to be. And I do think you at least have to be open to perhaps more ideas about where you could go. I'll just share one example of a good friend of mine. Decided he wanted to get closer to home, but there wasn't much in meteorology in that part. And so he's actually doing data analysis in the medical field because of his analyst skills and his programming skills, and how you deal with data and how you handle it and share that information. And he's very happy. So I think, look at where your strengths are, look at where your skills are. It's really hard to say what's most popular at this particular moment in time, but I think the skills that you have play to so many different opportunities for careers. And again, in a given moment in time, it might be that you have to shift away from this particular field for a little bit of time and wait for things to get better. But yeah, I think right now, at least, just a lot of industries are holding close and not hiring a lot just because of the uncertainty, which I do think at some point has to get better, and it can't last for too much longer. Next.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. Becky, like from your perspective within the private sector, and you have this unique background of emergency management, which is huge, but also taking a hit these days at the federal level. What skills do you recommend going into the private sector?
I mean, I think still one of the biggest ones is communications. I know there's been, obviously a big shift to AI, and we have tools like Copilot and ChatGPT that can, help us write these things. Um, and I think there are certainly uses for it, don't get me wrong, but I think when it comes to translating a weather forecast and its impacts, and to Dave's point, the certainty and confidence level in that forecast, there really is no replacement for the human who can interpret, who has the past knowledge of, looking at storms that are similar, that historical context. And then just being able to be a human to another human, saying, this is your call, here are the facts, I'm going to let you make the decision. And so it's really, I think it's a big part of what is still going to be relevant no matter where the field goes, is that ability to communicate with a client, with a customer, to be able to translate a complex, uncertain weather forecast. Models are able to see farther out in time now. We can see a hurricane from the very beginning, a week and a half out, and that's a whole challenge, right? because you then have to figure out how to cut through the noise, and become a trusted source. Um, so this is not something that like I am particularly good at or would ever do, but like content creation. I've seen a lot of young meteorologists build a pretty broad following on, TikTok and Instagram. Um, and they are making a difference. They're getting weather information out to people. Um, Obviously, we hope to some extent that they have the degree and they are saying the right things and they're not, unnecessarily hyping something up and, scaring people. But that's another form of communicating, and it's meeting people where they're at on certain platforms. And that can be monetized as far as I understand it. I'm a little old for all of that. So I really think we're never going to lose the need for good communicators in weather. So if that's a skill that you can work on, and even retail jobs, even like I worked at Pizza Hut, I worked as a cashier, all of those helped develop my ability to talk to people, to make small talk, to have conversations. So again, don't overlook, some of these seemingly lesser roles. They all have, a point in helping build your overall, profile as a professional.
Yeah, thank you,
Yeah, I
Becky.
would just add to that. Wow, that was really well said, both of you. And for those of you who may not know this yet, I'm serving on as a lead of a drafting team where we're a few weeks out from releasing a new AMS statement on the indispensable role of people in the weather, water, climate value chain. And it goes directly to what you were saying, Becky. You can forecast that hurricane out, it can be out there in, off the coast of Africa and following it the entire way. But if you can't communicate that hazard effectively to people, ultimately, that's fundamentally important. In addition to that, I whenever I'm talking to prospective students and their parents, I sort of do this tongue-in-cheek thing where I say, whenever you graduate from here with your BS degree in meteorology, you're going to know something. And they like smile and whatever, and okay. But you do. You, as Dave said, you have math skills. You have skills in coding, and whether it be, most of you are taking some Python or SQL or R, and you can't take too many of those courses. Although that said, AI is going to supplant some of the work that programmers have done, and rightfully so. That tedious stuff, where you'll be left with doing contextualization and interpretation and analysis and review and all of that. You know physics, classical physics, thermodynamics, fluid dynamics, problem solving, creative thinking. I mean, who wouldn't want you? You can go out, you can just whenever we come out of this, more than ever, employers are going to need people who know something, and you are in a very good position. I think all of you who have gone through these programs, quantitative reasoning, stuff like that. You can't beat it. Anyway, that's all I have to say.
And to build off of your point, Rich, there was a question asked in the chat about falling back onto a minor as an option if you do a minor. So I think that's a great way to get additional skills.
Yeah, can I comment on that for a moment?
Go for it.
And maybe others want to as well. But I am the biggest advocate for minors. I mean, I think you should get as many minors as you can fit into your schedule. I mean, a probability and statistics minor, a prob and stats minor, a data science minor, a communications minor, even a minor in, we have at Millersville, we have a minor in broadcast communications, where you get in front of the green screen and stuff like that. Even if you're not interested in broadcast meteorology, there's nothing like going in front of a green screen and trying to keep a trend of thought. Man, I am terrible at it. I am absolutely terrible at it. which is why, why I'm not a broadcast meteorologist. I'll let other people who can do it much better than I. But yeah, if you can do a minor, if you can fit a minor into your schedule, it just broadens your portfolio, and that's what's so important today.
I was going to add, sort of along the lines of a minor. Obviously, I went from operational forecasting and somehow ended up in consulting. Um, and much of what I do now is not related to meteorology. It's more in the customer success, stakeholder engagement, things like that. But what a trend I am seeing in the consulting space is the need for, I don't know if climatologist is quite the right word, but they are using climate scientists to help state and local in particular. So this is getting away from the federal space, and not, not even FEMA, but state and local governments are increasingly looking to consulting firms to help them make decisions when it comes to hazard mitigation and understanding the climate impacts and risks that they're going to face over the next several years. So if you're at all interested in, the field of climatology and you're seeing, a lot of the scary headlines and the funding going away, keep a little bit of hope, because I think most people, and especially those who work and see it, in places like Charleston and other coastal locations, they know it's happening. They see it all the time, and they need people who know what they're doing. So just you keep consulting in the back of your head, and I'm always willing to chat with folks about that space and who some of the firms are that are doing this work.
I have a question for Dave.
Sure.
You occasionally go on Capitol Hill, right? And
Yeah.
if you remember during the George W. Bush administration, we were not allowed to use the word climate on Capitol Hill. It was just a no-no. But we got around it. We got around it pretty effectively by just talking about everything else. We're talking about extreme weather, talking about weather hazards and the trends, and coastal flooding, and increases in flash flooding and flash droughts and all of that sort of thing. There are ways of making your statement, making yourself heard without having. I know it's just playing a game. It looks that way, but you can still get your point across.
Yeah, so I think something to think about is what would differentiate you from someone else who's applying for a particular position, and then knowing your audience. So just like when you go to Capitol Hill, you have to know who you're talking to and what their interests are, and then you can start the discussion, framing it so that it's talking about weather and climate, but from the perspective of what their main concern is, whether it's agriculture, whether it's transportation, whether it's defense, whether it's national security. Weather and climate touches all of that, which I think is why the degree is so valuable, because it intersects almost everything we do. So I had this story, this is from a number of years ago. I was at actually an AMS meeting in DC, and the meeting had ended, and so I had gone back to the hotel and gave him my valet slip to get the car, because you can only park your car with the valet in DC, which means you pay a lot. But anyway, so I'm standing there waiting for my car, and there's this gentleman next to me, and he's waiting for his car. And we started chatting. And he worked for a large medical company. And one of the things they would do is make drugs for cancer patients. And they had started doing basically, on-time delivery, right? So providing the drug that was needed, when it needed to be there. But then they had an experience where weather interrupted that, and they almost didn't get the drug to the person in time. And the whole company at that point apparently went, oh my goodness, we need to change the way we do things. And we need to start talking to and actually hire consulting firms to learn, what are the risks? And maybe some days we just need to deliver that medication days ahead of time to avoid any disruption of what's going on. And he said that was a moment that was just seared into his head about how they just it's a whole different aspect of their entire industry now that they're worried about, at least for this one company. I don't know who it was or anything else, but it was a very interesting story of how everything that we do percolates across so many sectors of what's going on in our economy, and you just can't get away from it. And that's a value to your career.
Is it, you hear different percentages on this, and I've heard everything from as low as 40% and 14% and as high as 70% of how the gross domestic product is weather sensitive. And so if you take just the average of that, about 40% of the gross domestic product is weather sensitive. I mean, you're laying concrete tomorrow, I mean, there's a whole organization called the Weather Risk Management Association. And of course, they're out of Chicago. Why Chicago? Because that's where the commodities market is, right?
Yeah, I think that provides a really good like summary of what we've discussed so far is like these past few statements is that while federal government jobs, they are slowly starting to open and just have a little patience and hopefully we'll get out of being this unstable time. But while we're waiting is to get skills that you can use anywhere because this field is so applicable for so many different things. So I do want to shift gears just slightly, but staying on that. So another question that was asked in the Q&A, and it also came up in the questions beforehand. With the current state of science in our country, what are the opportunities internationally? And should students pursue those if they if they can go international? I don't know who would be best to answer that. Well, how about you? You spoke up first.
Geez. I'll keep my mouth shut next time. Heck yes. Go after international opportunities. I mean, I can't help but telling a story about a student that I had years ago. She came into my office and she was I think she was a sophomore at the time, and she was questioning whether or not she wanted to stay in the major. And I said, of course you should. I was trying to talk her into it. And I said, what you need is an experience. Well, it turns out that the experience that she had was through was it the DADD or DAAD? It's a German internship program. She went to the Max Planck Institute, worked for a researcher where she was looking at the transport of oil slicks in the North Sea, came back, learned to speak German along the way, came back to Millersville, was so ramped up that she went on to graduate school at the University of Nebraska and studied methane in the Arctic. And I mean, the story is just, should you do international? Absolutely. If nothing more, it opens your mind to the different cultures that there are. It expands your horizons. You maybe learn a new language along the way. And there are opportunities, more opportunities than there have been internationally, because there's some brain drain in this country, and those people are bringing over some American students as well. Not that you have to be an American student to appreciate that, but we seem to be suffering the consequences. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, if there's an opportunity, don't don't let any grass grow under your feet. Take advantage of the international opportunities.
I would just add that I think as a student is probably the easiest time in your life to be, to travel internationally, to live internationally. Um, I think like a lot of people who are a bit uneasy as to what they're seeing in the administration have at least maybe briefly thought of going to live in a different country. And it's hard. It's very, very hard to find a job in a different country and get all the necessary paperwork and the logistics of it all. And especially if you have a family, that's even more challenging, and, two people that have to work. So I think if you can, if you have the opportunity as a student, absolutely take it. Had a different thought there, and I don't. Yeah, I really echo what Rich said. I think seeing and experiencing different cultures, experiencing how weather is different in other parts of the world, is really, really fascinating. And I really wish I had done it when I had the chance.
Yeah.
So great answers. Lots of great feedback there. I would also add, so let's say you do go international for a couple of years and then you start looking for jobs back in the US. Well, again, that international experience is going to differentiate you from a lot of other people who are applying. And I think everybody will view that as being a positive aspect of your resume. So, again, uh, Becky said it well. It's the easiest time to do this is when you're when you're a student and just getting out and you're on your own and you have that flexibility. It's a lot easier to navigate the challenges. But then you show later on that you've navigated those challenges, you were successful internationally, you want to come back to the US, they'll be saying, wow, look what this person did in 2 years. That's impressive. Come work for us.
Yeah, all great answers. And Rich, to your point of like the brain drain going on that is starting to drive some of these international opportunities. So thinking more about us as people and us as students, what are some ways that we can manage our mental health during these times of so much uncertainty of what our job market is going to look like next year, or grad student opportunities are going to look like next year?
Are you directing that to me?
Anyone. You just
I heard-
happened to say brain drain, so that
Well, no, you said Rich earlier, and I thought, okay, well, that's the hardest question of all. There was one question in the spreadsheet that we had. It was the very last question that went along with that, and it says, "Do you have any hope? And if so, why?" And and I say, I was actually commenting to that individual. I said, "That's the question, isn't it? I do have hope because it's my nature to find." I'm just reading what I responded to this individual. I do have hope because it's in my nature to find new paths, and I think that's the solution. I doubt that we'll ever see a weather, water, climate enterprise as it was prior to this administration, but people need to have confidence in public services. So entities like National Weather Service and FEMA, et cetera, may look different in the future, but their mission statements are not for profit. And infrastructure will be there when level heads prevail, and it'll be strengthened. And I think that you have to be optimistic. And I know that students are in a tough time right now. I have a son who's in college right now, and I understand it, and I don't have any. There's no magic wand, and I wish I had one, and I would make so much of this uncertainty go away. And I don't want to sound cliche-ish, but it does make you stronger. As you have to navigate this, you become more malleable, more flexible to different paths and different schemas. You can learn from the things that are going on now in a way. And all that I would say is try to maintain a really positive attitude, try to see the sort of the cup half full perspective. You have tremendous value as a undergraduate or graduate students. You have tremendous value in the skills that you're gaining, the fundamental understanding and basic laws of physics that they aren't going to change, and people are going to want you to bring that problem solving capability to their enterprise. So just be positive, and maybe 3 months from now we'll do this again or something and be more positive about it. I hope so. I know that that's not an answer. It's just hope upon hope.
So if you think about mental health, first thought is, this thing that you carry around with everywhere, there are times when that should just disappear. Um, I think cell phones and always being connected and always checking them has really been unhelpful. I think research is coming out now that is actually showing very consistently that this interconnection that we have always on is just bad for human beings. So I believe in doing things like going out for a walk with friends and having conversations. How many times have I seen groups of students going across campus and they're grouped together and they're all texting each other on their cell phone, they're looking at their cell phone, and they're actually not having a conversation verbally from person to person. And when I see that, if I know the students, I'll stop them and encourage them to put the cell phone in their back pocket and actually talk to your friends. But what do you love to do? For many years, I ran. I would go running every day just to get out. Mowing the grass actually was good. Going for hikes, bike rides, if you like music. So what is it that you enjoy that you could do with other people? Again, I think our social networks are really what helps us in times of trouble. And of course, our families can also be there for us. So spend time, not just, I know everybody has to study hard and that's part of it. I typically tell students, work really hard, 6 days a week or 5.5, but take at least a day where you just go and you get away. And the question is, what do you want to do? And it's really up to you. I also, now that my running days are kind of over with, I read more. I do hike more. I'm starting to bicycle a lot more. But there are things that you hopefully enjoy in your life that are outside of, in essence, your work life. And a college student, that is your work life, right? You're working on being a student. That gets you out of that and does the other things that you enjoy. And that I think helps, at least it helps me with the stress that we all face, is seeing that view. And then just, if you have anybody who's in their 50s or 60s or 70s, chat with them. They'll have a very different life experience than you, and they have a much longer term perspective, which is maybe why we're having this webinar event, although that doesn't count for Becky. Um, but it really, I always valued when I was in my 20s talking to people who are in their 60s and 70s because of their life experience. And I was always amazed at some of the things they had been through and that they navigated just fine, although it wasn't easy. But seeing them through their eyes, that was valuable. So maybe it's a grandparent or, a next door neighbor. So think about that and how you could do that.
I love everything about that answer, Dave. This question really struck me also when I was reading through the responses to the form. I have a 3-year-old, for those who don't know, and her middle name is Hope. And we named her that for a lot of reasons. And ones I think that we're, really being reminded of right now in a very challenging and very difficult time. My job is very uncertain right now. I've already had one funding lapse at FEMA, supporting FEMA, and I have 2 weeks left on this funding, and then I don't know what happens after that. Trying to be optimistic, trying to, stay positive, as Rich said, but it's hard. And to Dave's point, also, it's really easy to go down the rabbit hole of doom scrolling. But I also like to hope scroll sometimes and try to curate my Instagram feed. That's really the only social media I do, but try and curate that feed so that I see sparks of joy, whether it's my friends' kids or just funny accounts, things like that. It's all about the sphere of control. And I think I said this when we had our meeting initially on this. There's so much that's out of our control right now. And that's scary and it's overwhelming. And I can't imagine how much more so that feels as a student right now. Your whole future in the span of, 6, 7, 8 months became very uncertain. And to put it very bluntly, that sucks. And I want to really empathize with everything that you all are feeling right now. So, sphere of control, and I think networking and being around people who, are also, experiencing something similar, but people who may be able to provide opportunities or, even just, chat about something, chat about their experience. Maybe they know somebody who knows somebody. That's why I think organizations like AMS and NWA and IAEM, like all of these are so, so critical, and even more so in times like these, to be able to build those connections and chat and say, well, this part of the weather enterprise, there's all of this going on. What's happening over here? Oh, well, there's maybe a few more jobs opening up here. Like all of those conversations, can make a difference. It may not be immediate. You may meet somebody at AMS and then 6 months later be like, oh, I remember talking to that person. Let me find them on LinkedIn and connect with them. You really never know when those types of connections will, pop back up and end up turning into a huge opportunity. So I think right now, sphere of control and hang on to any hope that you can. It's really, I think, what's going to get us all through this. And we will get through this. We will. We always have. Humanity is, human race is very, very resilient, and we've all gone through hard things before. I know it's hard to think about it right now, but yeah, to Dave's point, talk to people in your family, in your life that have gone through other challenging times. It's it's just the cycle of this earth spinning through the atmosphere, I think.
Yeah, and just to say for each of your answers, someone put in the Q&A, thank you for affirming that what students are feeling isn't necessarily an over-exaggeration. So as students, I say that because I was just a student a few months ago. Hearing those affirmations from people who have been through times like this, maybe not quite exactly this sphere, but whatever it may have been, is good to hear. And then kind of similar vein of the mental health, it with some of these things that students are feeling, how do you keep the passion for weather and interest for weather alive when it seems like I noticed in the Q&A form that someone says it's like taboo talking about climate change now. So how can we talk about some of these things and then keep our interest and passion in weather?
2 words: good trouble. You notice that climate.org is now climate.us, I think is the different good trouble. There are so many ways that you can do things differently. I was chatting with someone today who has what she calls protest projects, and they're as small as, and I don't think this is small at all, but it's as small as creating social media videos for her part of NOAA to spread awareness. Like that people don't always know what different parts of NOAA do, or different parts of the weather industry. And that can move the needle when it comes to, oh, well, maybe I should contact my congressperson because I didn't know that this was a thing that they did, and now I care about this. Um, it might take some creativity, but I think good trouble and finding ways to still bring awareness and make a difference, even if it's just your friends and family. There are ways.
So, and for me, it's, I always get hope going outside and just seeing, listening to the birds sing and watching the sunrise occasionally when I'm walking the dog, all those things. And I'll just add, so my first job after my master's degree, and I also had a gap between master's and PhD, took 10 months to get that job.
Hmm.
So I was waiting. Hope was starting to dwindle, but I always felt that this was it was supposed to be, and again, weather and climate are these jobs are always going to be needed. And opportunities may wax and wane a bit over time, but our society needs you, and that's not going to change over time. The opportunities may shift, but the overall field needs to be here.
And I would just add that if you're trying to keep alive that passion, just do it with friends. There's go out, be with the people who share the passion that you have. Even if not even necessarily other meteorology majors, but just people who love science, who love inquiry, who are curious. Be with those people. It gives you it enlivens you.
I think that's actually one of the biggest reasons we are where we are today is a lack of curiosity. And I think the
Yep.
more that we can be curious, the more that we can share the joy of being curious, the better.
Yeah, so in my undergrad experience, that was one thing a piece of advice I was told by a meteorologist in charge at a National Weather Service office was always have curiosity, and that keeps your passion alive and keeps that science drive in you going. So thanks for all of the answers. As we are starting to approach 8 here in the Eastern time, I wanted to open it up to all three of you. If you have any parting advice or parting words, anything that you want to share with students. I believe Rich had some things that he might have wanted to share. So feel free.
I put together a document that is in PDF that Gideon, if you're there, if you're listening, if you want to be able to post that so that everyone can get a copy of it. It's just I call it positioning your rudder to navigate your career path, and it talks about what high impact roles and what the starter skills, what is it, where to look, and what the starter skills are. And anyway, it's just for you to have. It's not comprehensive. It's as much as I could think of in putting it together, and hopefully it will be helpful. Hopefully everyone can open that. I mean, just try it myself and see. Oh yeah, it does open. Anyway, and and of course, by all means, if any of you have any questions, you can email me at just richard.clark@millersville.edu. And I'm happy to help out in any way I can, even if it's sharing your passion.
Oh, both came off mute at the same time. No, I lost my train of thought there. I had it in my head. So you go, Dave. I'll get it back.
Okay. So one of the things I've always been really tickled with about this community is that it's so service oriented, right? This is all about helping the public. It's the impact on weather and climate in people's lives and how we make that, more of a positive and less of a negative. And so you've gone into a field, you're investing into a field, that I think is very affirming. I think it's a field that is very needed, and we need you. Because the population keeps growing. Severe weather is not going away. Nothing else. Climate is changing, warming. How does all that work? So I think it's just trust that this is going to work out. That you are here for a reason. And looking back is often a lot easier than looking forward. And so what brought you into this field in the first place, and let that perhaps be your guide for what happens next. And I do think patience right now is needed in finding ways to lessen anxiety. But I do believe that we will all get through this. And at the end, it will, hopefully we can help create a better world.
I think I'd just like to add that however you're feeling, whatever your, emotional response is to the news, the headlines, to, seeing our field under fire, it's valid. All of it is very valid. I am feeling all sorts of things at, both what's happening to the weather world and to FEMA. And it's hitting very, very close to home for me. I'm not going to get into details, but there's a lot going on, and it's really easy, I think, to be like, okay, no, this isn't as a big a deal. It's not that bad. No, it's a lot of what's happening right now is kind of scary. There's a lot of uncertainty, and I think, it's okay to feel uncertain and scared. And that's why community is so important. but I would say don't be too insular in who you're surrounding yourself with. You don't want to go down like this collective doom spiral, which unfortunately is, I think, a little easy to do sometimes. Um, but I would say, have a few people that you can reach out to that, will kind of pull you back and maybe help put things into perspective and, help. I always look at it as like my little corner of the world, my little house here, my family, my friends, like all of that is wonderful and amazing. And yes, there's so much that I can't control right now, but the things that are around me right now are really good. Um, and I don't know what the future of my career is. And that's really scary. And I can empathize with how a lot of you are feeling right now with not knowing, what your career at all might look like. Um, but I do think that we have to have hope that things will even out and things will stabilize and the weather's not going away. Climate's not going, all of this, it's all still going to be there. No matter how much people want to, try and think that we can just kind of hide it under a rug, it's not. The weather impacts everything. And I think holding on to that more than anything else should help get us all through this because we have all the ideas of how weather impacts everything. Um, so yeah, I think I would just community and keeping that little reminder in the back of your head that we are needed and we are so important and are only going to be more important as the climate keeps changing.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all for that parting advice. It definitely, I mean, even me as an early career person, that helps me significantly because things are still uncertain for everyone. And just to build off of what you said, Becky, on community, AMS is a great community. And this isn't a plug for AMS because it's an AMS webinar, but uh, getting involved with AMS is a way to build your community. I've met Rich, Dave, and Becky through AMS, and we've known each other for a little while now. And those opportunities that I have to speak with you and to put something together like this wouldn't have been possible without AMS. So get involved. Uh, easy way is with BOSA. That is a shameless plug. um, so BOSA would like to thank everyone for coming tonight, and a huge thank you to Becky, Dave, and Rich for all of your advice, answering all of the questions. Thank you to the AMS staff that's here, Gideon and Claudia, for helping us put this together. And we hope it was a very fruitful discussion. If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out. If you need anything, BOSA is on social media, so you're able to reach out to us if you need something. And then also consider joining AMS webinars mailing list and read the student news that gets sent every month from AMS and BOSA. So thank you all for joining tonight. We hope you have a great night.
Thank you very much, Dylan and Becky, Dave, Rich. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your evening to bring this to our community, especially our students that are, they're concerned about their future, and rightly so. And for those that did tune in, thank you for being here and being a part of this very important conversation. If you did miss a section, or if you want to revisit something that may have stood out to you, then the full recording will soon be posted on our AMS YouTube channel, which I just had put on our chat. If you're an AMS member and want to keep this discussion going and keep it alive, we'd love to see you over at the AMS Open Forum. That's a place where you can share whatever's on your radar, whether it's a question you didn't get to ask, or it's an idea that you might come up with later on, you'd like to build upon it. Please feel free to do so. And finally, yeah, we definitely understand that these are challenging times. But it is conversations like this that we've had tonight that remind us that we do not have to navigate this alone. Your concerns are valid. We share those concerns, and we are there to hear those concerns. And we are there for you, as we are, for each other. And that's how we'll get through this. We are in this together, and any support that we can provide to one another is going to be very much welcome. So hang tight, hang in there. We're there with you. And once again, everybody, thank you for joining us this evening, and we will see you at the next AMS webinar. Have a good evening, everybody.
Thank you, students that were on.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.
See y'all.